welcome to another exciting episode of the Tea with TEP. I'm Jack Knoxville, the founder and executive director of Trans Empowerment Project. And with me on today's show, we have Mo. Would you like to do your little intro, Mo?
Yeah. Hey, I'm Mo Viviane. My pronouns are they, them, and I am the program manager of Trans Employment Projects at Trans Empowerment Projects. And I will pass it over to Heather.
Hello, I am Heather Knoxville. I use she, they pronouns. I am the Chief Operating Officer at Trans Empowerment Project, and also the manager of our Sisterhood Not Sisterhood program.
Awesome. Well, thank you both so much for being on the call with me today. I wanted to take a minute to just introduce a little bit more about TEP and let everybody know who we are in the first place. So thank you for letting everybody know that you work for TEP. You are a part of our dope crew of powerful supporters and helpers who are out here working to empower this community in the ways that we are. But for anybody who is just tuning in for the first time, Trans Empowerment Project is a federally recognized 501c3 nonprofit whose mission is to move the two-spirit, trans, intersex, and gender-expansive communities, especially disabled BIPOC folks, out of crisis and into empowerment. And we're specifically doing that by trying to work with our partners and others around us to center the lives of disabled, two-spirit, trans, intersex, gender-expansive community members who are BIPOC in all of our systems of support as we try to show up for the communities and the clients around us who are in need of direct aid right now. So the Tea with TEP, we take a deep dive into some of the intersectional issues that this community is dealing with. And we really just want to help you all connect a little bit more with the work and the culture of all things related to TEP. So here we go. This month, being March, we're talking more specifically about Women's History Month. And then we're also going to dive in a little bit on Trans Day of Visibility. But first, let's talk about Women's History Month. And Heather, Mo, if you would humor me in something, I actually think that where we should start is let's talk about who we're talking about when we say women. Because I think we need to like really just right off the bat, we need to establish, who and what we're talking about when we say women. So, Heather, I know you run Sisterhood Not Sisterhood. Would you like to field this question?
Absolutely. I think that when we talk about women in any context, whether it's through Women's History Month or anything like that, we are including all women, cis women, trans women, BIPOC women, disabled women, all women should be included in that conversation.
Thank you. And for me, I feel like I think it's important to really think about like what the definitions are of a woman because this has been a really hot topic for quite a while now, especially as some of those misinformed, less educated folks on trans issues like to try to go to traditional tropes about defining women, and they have their own definitions of what a woman is. And so for me, I think it is important to talk about like how we define women. That's one thing I actually really like about Heather's Sisterhood Not Sisterhood program and their training. It's something I bring up quite often, and also why we felt it was important to have Heather on this call with us today. Yeah, Heather, if you would talk a little bit about Sisterhood Not Sisterhood, and also talk about that exactly like I said, what what are the criteria? What are the definers, the definitions of womanhood, and who's making these decisions?
Thanks, Jack. So yeah, Sisterhood Not Sisterhood is a program at TEP that was born out of a training that I led at the Women's Convention in 2022. I really wanted to give folks there, this is a huge space of thousands of feminists and allies. And I really wanted to give them an idea of how to be like intersectional in their feminism. It shouldn't just be centered around cis white women, as we're talking about feminism, women's rights, that kind of thing, we have to be inclusive of our trans sisters. So I just went with this training, and it was so well received that we kind of came up with the idea to turn it into a program where we're building connections and fostering community between cis women and trans women so that we are united as a community to fight and to keep the momentum going for women's rights so that no one is left behind in that struggle. And there's actually a really simple definition for what a woman is. A woman is an adult human female. Female can refer to gender and not necessarily biological sex. So if someone's gender is woman, then that's what they are. So there doesn't really need to be an exhaustive definition. There is no certain box that you can put someone in and say, oh, this person checks all the right characteristics or features or whatever. So yes, they are definitely a woman. We all look different. We come in different sizes, shapes, colors, abilities. So yeah, it's very simple. An adult human female.
So what, I mean, I obviously have my own thoughts about why it's problematic to go based off of stringent definitions, that are antiquated and rooted in like kindergarten level science. But I would like to make some space for Mo, who hasn't been heard from yet. Mo, yeah, what are your thoughts on like the definitions of woman and women and all of that?
Yeah, I think especially identity is what you decide. So like being a woman, there's not one definition of what a woman is or what makes up a woman. If you are a woman, you're a woman. If you say you're a woman, you're a woman. There's no questions asked with that. That's kind of like where I'm coming from. Yeah, and I don't know, as you all were speaking, I literally was just like, wow, like I'm non-binary, but also like I am all the things. So like thinking about how our identities are just very large intersections in so many different ways. So I don't get to define what makes up a woman for someone else, nor do they get to define that for me or anyone else. So yeah, that's kind of where I'm coming from. You decide.
I love that, and I think that's key. I think it is up to each person how they define womanhood for themselves. Um, I also think that it's important to note that the policing of these qualities is coming from white supremacy and coming from this capitalism, colonialism, all of those like problematic, systemic, abusive cultures, who think it's okay to police the bodies of other people. And when we're thinking about the definitions of woman, like I actually had an issue happen. I think you both were there when we had a retreat for TEP, and there was somebody who was a guest of someone who came to the retreat, and we were sitting there, and the conversation popped up about what a woman was, and this person looked at me, and I mean they were just like, I think a woman is somebody who can reproduce, and of course everybody's like, There are so many reasons that's problematic. Because, I mean, not all women have the ability to or desire to reproduce. That's first and foremost. And then on top of it is like when you start to define a woman based on, certain bodily characteristics, like, oh, they have a large chest. Not all women have large chests. Some men also have large breast tissue. There's lots of things that go into why these are just horrible units of measurement when saying like this is a woman. So yeah. All right. So let me ask you then, each of you, as we're thinking about the women that, have inspired you, the women who have influenced your life, because I got to be real, like when I think about Women's History Month, most of the time what comes to mind, cis white women, because that's who has been flooded in the feeds about, womanhood. And too often, we're not seeing women of color being lifted up. We're not seeing trans women included in these spaces. We're not seeing non-binary femme folks who identify as women being lifted in that space at all either. And so for me, I would like to shed some light on some amazing women who may have been getting overlooked over the last, I don't know, couple of centuries. So, and I also want to include in this is like especially for our listeners and people who are, really like interested in this conversation, as you're thinking about like the women who have influenced your life and you are broadening that scope and you're really thinking about that, it's important to realize that like we are all living history right now. There are so many amazing and very powerful women all around us. And so we don't have to wait. That's the whole thing behind the roses right now, is we don't have to wait until somebody has passed away to memorialize and honor them. We can honor them right now by lifting up amazing people who are living and contributing to history presently. Support them right now. So, if you have your own thoughts and ideas about women who deserve a shout out, who deserve some visibility, who may not have previously gotten that, please take a minute to go to our website, transempowerment.org, and tell your story with us. We will make sure that storytelling link gets out there. But yeah, share your story. Let us know who are the women we need to know more about, because we want to make sure we share the spotlight with as many powerful and amazing women as we possibly can. And we also want to get them all invited into Sisterhood, Not Sisterhood, to grow some power with Heather over here. So yeah. All right, Heather, Mo, let's hear it. Who are your inspirational women? You can tell me folks who have passed, folks who are here. Who you got for me?
I can go first.
Yeah, let's
Um,
hear it.
yeah, so there's three specifically that have really just actually, there's so many women. I will say that so many women, of course. But Marsha P. Johnson, of course, who, if you don't know who Marsha P. Johnson is, she is a a very important figure in the LGBTQ rights movement, and also a prominent advocate. Was a prominent advocate for trans rights. There's also Sylvia Rivera, who was the co-founder of the Gay Liberation Fund and the Gay Activist Alliance, who also fought tirelessly for the rights of trans folks and marginalized communities. And then there's Miss Major Griffin Gracie, who I am so happy I was able to meet back in January. And she is a trans activist and community leader, advocating for rights and the well-being of trans folks, particularly trans women of color. And those are my three.
Awesome. How about you, Heather?
Well, I don't really know that I have a list of folks that I can name out. Honestly, one of the reasons that I love Sisterhood Not Sisterhood as a program so much and have thrown myself into um, making something of this program and fostering these connections and community is because I spent a large part of my life extremely isolated. I won't go into the details of why that was, but suffice it to say that I did not have a whole lot of access to diverse television shows, media, books, internet, that kind of thing. So I didn't have a large pool of motivational and iconic women to follow and to exemplify, and all of those kinds of things. I didn't even have a close relationship with my mother or any kind of like um women or femme folks in my family growing up. So as I've come out of that kind of situation, the women that I find inspirational are the ones who are just showing up, the ones who are learning, doing better. We have a community captain here at TEP who is a trans woman running for office in her state, doing all kinds of amazing things, bringing visibility to the community. And um, it's just really inspirational, to watch her put herself out there and to run for office, which is a whole daunting experience in itself. We have, Jackie, who works here at Trans Empowerment Project, who has gone from being a client of TEP to now running managing one of our um, largest and most impactful programs, working with our clients, even our incarcerated clients. She's about to start working with the women in Sisterhood Not Sisterhood, who know that there are things that they could be doing to be better, stronger allies, and they don't know how, and they want to show up for the community, so they find places that they can learn and grow, and um, just the ones out there doing it behind the scenes, I guess, is who inspires me.
I love that. And I mean that's exactly what I was getting at before with like these are women who are badasses that are working to create change and impact, the history of the future that we're going to be telling ourselves about tomorrow. Which is it's so awesome to be able to be in community and watch these folks grow, and to also be a part of that change with them. So I love that you're lifting up these folks. I will say for myself, I'm like you, Heather. I feel like there are so many amazing women that I have been in community with in doing this work through TEP especially. When I was growing up, I also didn't have the best representation of goodness, period. Not good role models in with men, with anybody, period. So for me, it's yeah, I have a very similar look on things. I will say I have been able to find a lot of inspiration in just the stories of my ancestors. That to me, that is where I find the most power, and thinking about like the journey of my being, everything that it took to get from this planet, just starting out as a planet, to my existence, my grandmother especially, and thinking about the things that she had to deal with as a woman of color, you know um, for a lot of folks who maybe are not aware of the history of colonization and how all of that came to play. But my family is Puerto Rican, and so on my grandmother's side, so much trauma, so much generational trauma, so much racism, internalized racism that they have absorbed, and passed down from generation to generation. And then on top of that is like So my grandmother did not really talk about her existence um, at all. Like there just really wasn't conversation about like this is my past, this is my mom, this is nothing. Like I had to really, really dig to try to get any conversation out of her. And what I found in that, and then also in doing research since she passed, because she did pass quite a while ago, but in doing my own research and stuff, what I found was an entire history of shame and this feeling of not being good enough. And so as I started, y'all don't even understand how hyper focused I get on things like ancestry and genealogy stuff, but I really geek out on that. And so in digging through like census records and stuff, I found where my grandmother was listed as a house servant at like 12 years old. And then by the time she was like in her 20s, came to New York. And at that time in New York, if you were, from what the stories that I've heard from my family is like, if you were Puerto Rican and you were found on the streets past like 9 p.m. or whatever the curfew was, the cops were coming at you with billy clubs. They were spraying you, they were taking you down. You did not deserve to walk on this earth freely like that at that time. And knowing that, like, hearing the stories of what my mom went through, like, as they were coming up and having to deal with, just like horrendous living conditions because of poverty and all of the gatekeeping and all that other stuff. And then hearing that, like, when that happened, my grandmother finally was able to get them out of poverty, moved out of the city. They were in the Bronx and moved to a little bit further into upstate New York. And immediately my grandmother looked at her kids and was like, if anybody asks you, you're Italian, you don't speak Spanish anymore. And that was like the bleaching of our family right there. Because she was trying to escape all of that history and trauma, and so I do look at her though, and I think that like the things that she had to endure so that her kids could be safe, so that her grandkids could exist, and just knowing what she dealt with, like absolutely one of my heroes. So I think it's so important to acknowledge women at all levels. You know, those you have in your inner circle, as well as, some of those amazing celebrities and activists and people that, are just making waves in the greater sphere out there. But yeah, this is awesome. So I want to ask, like, when it comes to trans women, like when I look at trans women, I mean, looking at you look at anybody on the cast of Pose, for me, I'm like, yes, all of them, amazing. Angelica Ross, yes, absolutely. Uh, yeah, all of them are just phenomenal. I've been listening to Janelle Monáe's last album on repeat. Like, oh my god, it's so good, y'all. So I love being alive in a time where we have strong, powerful, beautiful trans women who are out here giving us so much love through culture and through sharing their stories in the ways that they are through TV and media and all that stuff. So who right now culturally relevant folks are giving you those vibes? Where are you getting that living history, art, music, culture? Who's giving it to you, Mo?
I'm thinking because like when we're thinking about Sheroes, I feel like it's so sad. Like I feel like talking about Bell Hooks is like I know she passed last year, but Bell Hooks has literally been like a staple in my life. So I'm still processing the grief of her passing. I will say that. Um, but as far as like pop culture, or folks who are like really in the scene, Raquel Willis is someone who really stands out to me a lot. I just ordered her book recently last week I just ordered her book and I cannot remember the title. But Raquel Willis's book is coming on the way to me. But I'm really excited to dig into it. I also have been really just like watching some of her like interviews and just like delving into like whether she's doing like group interviews like with other people, um or if she's doing like individual interviews, but specifically like I just she shows up and she shows out. Like, and I just really appreciate that. And I feel like, you know, the all the trans women in my life consistently show up and they show out. Like, and they show up for me and they show up for community. And yeah. And when you were talking about family earlier, I was just like, all my aunts, like when I think about my family too, like my family like definitely holds it down. All my aunts really just like keep me grounded, and I've really gotten like a good connection with them a lot more recently. That I've like reconnected with my family, and it's just been really nice to like hear stories of my grandmother and hear stories of my great grandmother. Like I also love Ancestry.com. I also think that like researching family is super important. Researching your ancestors is super important. Recognizing who your ancestors are is really important. So yeah, it's kind of like a dual thing for me. Yeah, so there's so many women. Bell Hooks passing really messed me up a bit. Still processing that, but also want to recognize Raquel, and just appreciate her.
Thanks for that. Yeah. And Heather, how about you?
Kind of echoing what you said, Jack, like all of the amazing women from Pose, Michaela Rodriguez being one of my favorites. I love a lot of the trans women musicians and femme, non-binary femme folks making waves in the music industry. Kim Petras is obviously awesome. One of the performers at our last Voices for Visibility, Shawnee Kish, is both femme, and two spirit, and was just super awesome. Really engaged with and excited about participating in Voices for Visibility last year. So just honestly, any of the badass trans women and femme folks out here making a name for themselves, showing up, being visible. I love when the folks showing up in media show, TV shows, movies, and stuff like that. I love it when you get to see characters who are trans, but it's not a huge part of the story. For instance, in the new Doctor Who episodes, I don't know if I can give any spoilers or whatever. So I don't want to give too much away, but one of the characters in the new episodes of Doctor Who, is trans, but it's very mentioned very in passing. It's not a huge deal. It's not a big part of her character's personality. Like that's all she is a, a trans woman or a trans person. So I really love that we're getting to the point where like, yes, there's more visibility, but it's not like forced visibility. You know what I mean? Like it's people just being people. It's not being trans people, of like the token character and this is their entire personality. So I love being able to see that like authentic representation as well.
Well, thank you for all of that. I will say, just because I have to go back and say yes to Shawnee Kish, I do. That Shawnee Kish is a vibe. If y'all have not heard Shawnee Kish, please go YouTube, Spotify, whatever. Follow on the Facebooks, on the YouTubes, on the everything, because Shawnee Kish is a vibe. Okay, going forward, yet still back. Uh, I do want to come back to the visibility thing. So that's a great segue. Y'all know how much I love these segues. Um, I had a whole dad joke about Paul Blart. It didn't manifest, so I didn't bring it into here, but I said enough. Y'all got it. Uh, so going back to the segue of visibility, that is another part of our conversation today that I want to talk about because it is Trans Day of Visibility. We are right here, right around the corner, Trans Day of Visibility. And Trans Day of Visibility is such a huge deal for this community. There are a lot of folks who somehow don't understand why it's a big deal, but, I want to help them to understand. And so I actually, I'm gonna kind of give you a little recap of my experience. So when I was growing up, back in my day, in the 80s and 90s, we didn't have this thing called visibility, nor did we have anything called authentic representation. Uh, Trans people have historically been the punchlines. And they and so horribly misrepresented in these ridiculous attempts to dehumanize us. So the lack of visibility, the lack of representation has had such a huge and negative impact on my personal life. I mean, I was 35 years old before I had the opportunity to transition. And a lot of that is because it was until I was 27 years old before I had the language to express what I was feeling and dealing with. And had I have had any representation, any visibility around this whole thing called trans, I may have been able to start my journey earlier, which means a lot of the traumas, a lot of the obstacles, a lot of the bullshit that I went through I more than likely would not have had to deal with. But this is exactly why, so many of our adversaries are trying to stop trans people from being visible. They don't want other people to see that we can live very healthy, happy, productive lives. But that's exactly what makes us so radical, is that we are thriving despite the oppression. We are building these things despite the number of obstacles and barriers that have been put into place. And because of that, TEP specifically, I know we love to amplify success stories. We love to let people know, this is what joy could and should look like. This what we're building is really about building that future that we all have deserved for so long. And so for me, Trans Day of Visibility is a huge deal. And especially year after year since I first got introduced to the idea of Trans Day of Visibility, just watching to see how many more businesses and organizations are recognizing Trans Day of Visibility as an actual day, seeing that it's not just small little pockets of trans orgs talking about this, but now it's becoming a bigger conversation. And especially right now, while there is so much anti-trans legislation out there, and there's a ton of misinformation that's already being slung across the internet as whether we like it or not, we make our way closer to the 2024 elections. We need to have visibility on authentic stories, real lived experiences of our community. And so for me, Trans Day of Visibility is a huge deal. And I am so excited that it's around the corner because we have lots of really cool things that we're cooking up. But I actually want to get some feedback from y'all and talk about, what does Trans Day of Visibility mean to you? How has it impacted your life? What are some ways that maybe you actually celebrate Trans Day of Visibility? What do you do on Trans Day of Visibility? So, Heather, you want to go first?
Absolutely. Well, I celebrate Trans Day of Visibility by making sure that I am talking about what that means, sharing about the community, why I care about the community, ways other folks can bring visibility, lifting up resources that folks can check out if they have any further questions about TDOV or the 2TIGE community in general. Also by making sure that I'm following and lifting up the stories of folks in the community, making sure that it's, I'm not centering myself in that conversation of like, I'm going to go and talk about TDOV. I share stories and posts and things from actual members of the community so that their voices and their platforms are getting that kind of recommendation. Even going further of like, if I want to buy TDOV merch and stickers and flags and things to like bring visibility on the day of or leading up to, I try to buy those from creators in the actual community and not from, Amazon or Walmart or things like that. So just making sure that the issues that the community is facing are being talked about, but that also joyful things from the community and sharing them from the actual people who are experiencing them.
Thank you. And real quick, I just want to say I appreciate the intentionality of even lifting up the joyful part just now, because that's one thing that has been very difficult in the past is that so many folks, especially different nonprofits, even and I say even, but really, especially across the progressive spaces, they tend to gravitate towards stories of harm. And what that does is it keeps this community in trauma. We do not need to keep reliving our trauma, especially to drive up donation dollars for any organization. So if you're out there listening and your organization is doing it, stop. That's it. Just stop. If y'all need help learning how to show up and be actual authentic allies and accomplices in getting to equity, please reach out to this team, because these three, the three of us, Heather, myself, and Mo, we are the ones who will come out and we will train you. We will make sure that you have everything you need to know so that you can show up in the ways that you want to show up, which is hopefully as an authentic ally rather than a performative progressive who's just wearing the t-shirts and saying the buzzwords, because this community has been through enough. And also because the folks who you are in community with, who are part of this community, maybe they don't want to do that heavy lifting. We have an organization. We are willing to take on that work, and we do. That is part of what we do. So yes, if you are in a situation like that, if your company, your organization, your friends, your whatever are really being kind of performative and they're not doing the accomplice thing right or well, and you just want to do better, please contact us at transempowerment.org. We are here to help. And that being said, Mo is definitely somebody who is an ally in the fight, especially across the workplace. But yeah, Mo, I would love to hear from you. What does TDOV mean for you, and how do you actually get to celebrate that day?
Yeah, I usually spend a lot of time with community and checking in on community that day. So usually in the past, like I would go to like picnics. We would have a picnic with a lot of community members here where I'm located, and also, of course, like raising awareness on social is something that I actively do. But a lot of that day is making sure like that my people are good. And we go out and do things that we enjoy. Kind of like leaning into the joy thing, or just joy in general, trans joy. Yeah, so I think it's really important, especially like I don't know. I feel like a lot of times, like there's, of course, there's like an expectation for trans folks to like do the things, because we're trans people and we have to do the things, especially BIPOC trans folks. But like, I just want to relax and like be out in the grocery store or and get some gather some things and go to the park and like have a picnic with a bunch of my friends. So definitely taking up space and like reclaiming space is something that TDOV, um, what I do for TDOV, definitely. Um, and I feel like even by just existing too, it's such a powerful act, you know? And it's also like we're increasing visibility for ourselves by reclaiming what's ours. So yeah, that's something that I lean heavy into.
I love that. And it's self care. I mean, what better way to make sure that we get to see another TDOV than to make sure that we are investing in ourselves by getting that self care that we deserve? And so I have to say, I have really enjoyed, being able to take some time for myself on TDOV. To Mo's point, that's the day when most people are like, they want to give us visibility, so we tend to work a lot of extra around TDOV. But it is so nice to be able to reclaim some time for yourself. It's important, and I think that is another thing to think about. Is like, as we think about Trans Day of Visibility, it really is, what does visibility even mean to you? For me, like, maybe that visibility is, like Heather said, I'm not in the room, but you're lifting me up. Whereas for other people, that visibility is, you need to call me into the center of that room and put the spotlight on me today, you know? And for yet other folks, they want visibility being, you are an advocate for trans people, but you are not putting a spotlight anywhere near them, because for them, they do not feel safe enough to have that direct visibility. So you can be visible as an ally, just by saying, like, trans people deserve a hell of a lot better than what we're doing. Show up in those ways. So you can also celebrate Trans Day of Visibility without outing people. I think this is a really important thing to bring up, especially right now, because visibility does mean so many different things to so many different people. And like I said, for some folks, they just don't feel safe. And it's not up to you, somebody who's not them, to qualify what and who and when things are safe for that other person. It is up to each individual to have the autonomy over their own being to say, I don't feel safe today. And if I don't feel safe, please don't share my stuff, you know? But at the same time, like, my story's a little bit different because I live very out and open with my identity. However, I have definitely been put into some very unsafe situations, and so certain parts of my existence I have asked, like, don't share. Um, for instance, I try to keep myself safe by not sharing photos and videos when I'm somewhere, like while I'm still there, because people don't need to know where I'm at all the time. So things like that can keep you safe. Also, like I said, with visibility, I mean, yeah, I mean, it is one of those subjects that can be very tricky to navigate, and especially for folks who, I mean, I've had people who I've been around who are like, "Oh, these are my friends. This is my trans friend Jack, blah blah blah." And like, they thought it was cool, like they thought they were being helpful. They were like, I'm acknowledging your transness. I'm trying to, like, be, this is my trans friend. Look, I can be a friend to a trans person. And I understood that they were coming from a good place. What they did not realize in that moment was, the person that they're introducing me to, I don't know that person. You don't know that person, what they're capable of, what their actual true intentions, thoughts, feelings towards trans people are. And I mean, if 2020 showed us anything, we don't know the people around us. A lot of folks that I had in my own personal network, who I thought very highly of, revealed themselves to not be the safest people, as their different levels of racism were exposed, and inherently I started to see examples of transphobia or different levels of bigotry. And so I think it's important for us to acknowledge that visibility may not be, you really need to know what kind of visibility you're trying to create, before you just go and start lifting up trans people. But hey, this is my trans friend Jack, he's doing all these things. Like, So please make sure you're getting consent. Please make sure you're aware of how your people are living their life. Obviously, if it's somebody who has a public Instagram, then they've got 30,000 followers. You're probably fine to lift that person up. If this person lives generally pretty quietly and they're not very open about their identity, you probably want to check with them before you tag them in a post and say, like, this trans person here. If you want to create visibility for the trans community as a whole, please, take the time to think through the suggestions that both Heather and Mo have lifted up with, creating visibility for trans artists and content creators, investing in or spending money with, different folks who are creators in general. I'm going to say special shout out to Wendy Woods, who is a great company. They make some really great designs. We have, oh my goodness, there's so many. Oh my gosh, my mind just went blank.
Transfigure Print Company.
There you go. That's who I was trying to come up with. Transfigure Print Company. I'm like, my shirt. I love Transfigure Print Company shirts. So sorry my mind went blank on that one, y'all. But I absolutely love that company. And I adore the work that these folks are putting out. There's Stealth Brothers out there who, they sell these really cool kits for trans men to keep up with, like, HRT supplies and stuff like that, especially when you're traveling. Those guys made it to Shark Tank, y'all. I met them at the Trans Wellness Conference many years ago, so I was very proud of them. Lots of really great people across the two-spirit, trans, intersex, and gender expansive community who are out there just thriving and kicking all kinds of ass. They are there to rise and thrive, which, hey, that's a little segue of its own, because I wanted to let y'all know, for anybody who's listening, we are working on putting together our first job fair and conference, if you will. It's a virtual event organized largely by Mo here. Do you want to give a little shout out about your event?
Yeah, of course. So we'll be having a leadership conference called Rise and Thrive, a leadership conference in July. It will be a 3-day virtual event, and it'll be full of some learning, some growing, some organizing, some applying for jobs or interest in jobs. And we also are looking for folks who are interested in some sponsorships, some speaking, some attending, and all the things. Really looking forward to it and excited to see it to come to fruition.
Me too. This has been great, to try to get off the ground. I'm so excited to see where we're at and that we are ready to roll. We've locked down a solid platform. We've got some exciting things coming up for folks. I know, Heather, you've got something coming up here in the next couple of days. I don't know if this podcast is going to come out in enough time for your event, but you could definitely guide people to where you're at if you want to just give your program a quick little shout out.
Thanks, Jack. Yeah, Sisterhood Not Sisterhood can be found on our website, transempowerment.org. Look under projects. You can find us there. And also we have a group on Facebook that you can join to find community. We're doing a live panel presentation next week, but again, this podcast probably won't be out, but early next month, we will also be launching a support group for folks with trans partners. So if that is you and you're looking for some support and a way to get active for the community and not feel so helpless, especially in the current climate, join us at Sisterhood Not Sisterhood and get plugged into all of the support and community that we are building there.
Fantastic. Thank you so, so much. This podcast may just barely make it out in time, but hopefully the listeners will catch it in time to join your event. If not, thanks for giving them the background on how they can connect with you, because I know Heather's got lots of stuff coming up. We have a whole ass campaign we're going to be dropping very, very soon. Yeah, I guess we can give a little teaser and just say it's all about interrupting the doom scroll and getting louder with love. We will have lots more on Louder with Love, especially during our next podcast. And I'm sure you will hopefully see it all over the internet sooner than later. We plan to drop that on Trans Day of Visibility, and we'll be connecting with some of our partners with Grant Makers for Girls of Color on Instagram to do that launch. So again, we have lots of exciting things coming up. We are going to be building all kinds of food pantries and expanding our network of food resources, especially to continue to meet the needs of the clients who've been reaching out to express their need for food as a resource. We've got lots of organizing opportunities for folks on the ground, especially around registering voters through Drag Me to the Polls. And we have our Community Captains organizing program. There's also lots of great ways that you can tell your story with us, or if you are a member of the community and you need a mentor, we do have a trans mentorship program. And if you are somebody who's like, no, I'm good, I want to be a mentor for somebody else, we got space for you too. So come visit us at transempowerment.org. We are here really doing everything we can to build that future that all of us have been dreaming of for so long, and we can't do it without your help. So we would love to hear from you, love to interact and hear more about what you have going on as well. So please reach out to us at transempowerment.org, and we look forward to sending you out another episode next month. Thanks so much for tuning in. Have a good day, y'all.